Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back with another Scale School. Today, we're going off the rails. We're going up north. Don't know why up north, but today, Mr. James Lawton, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. How's it going, Falcor?
Yep, can't complain. I can complain a lot. A lot is going wrong. A lot is going odd. It's hot in England, which is a new phenomenon. But yeah, we're sticking through it. It's Tuesday. I wish it was Friday. So yeah, what's going on, man?
We're getting there.
I kind of wish it was Friday a little bit. Now that you said Friday, no, it's good, man. It's good. To your point, I wouldn't say things are bad or backwards for me. It's not cold. I don't know. It's like it's one of those weird. I think okay. So I have this thesis that since the whole like December Claude Code thing, if you're in tech and you're like staying up to date, you're basically just getting hit with like a hit of dopamine every day because you wake up and there's something new. You get like really excited and you're like, I'm gonna go try it. And then it's just like nonstop, right? You can't relax. And I don't know, like the last few days has kind of been weird because there's like been a couple really cool things, but it feels like they've been kind of, I don't know, like not as exciting for some reason. And I don't know why. Everyone, it feels like, is complaining about how much AI they have now instead of how good the AI is. So maybe we've hit the inflection point of we have too much AI. But I don't know. That feels a little weird. The Kimi thing is weird right now. Everyone's complaining about it. That it's like the same price or more expensive, like whatever. I don't know. It's weird. And then I don't know if you saw
release. You mean?
Yeah, the K6 2.6 or whatever. I don't know. There's a bunch of people complaining because it's like the price is the same, and I because they expected it to be cheaper. I don't know, but then it's weird because like I feel like the GPU crunch is hitting. GitHub stopped letting people sign up for their plans. We've got coding plans that just burn out in like 1 to 2 prompts. I don't know. It's getting to the point where like I've started to actually write code again, which is weird. Like there's points where yesterday, fun fact, I tried to have a agent build a small little prototype, and it tried for 5 hours to build a Cloudflare worker front end. It was Kimi K2.5 turbo, so precision model, but like couldn't do it with V, couldn't do it with TanStack start, and so I just said, all right, I'm just gonna write the code. I still know how, thankfully, but true story.
That's crazy.
Wow.
I actually got for the first time ever rate limited on Codex because I was building, this is so nerdy. I was building this little kind of overlay that you can just bring up and put down for World of Warcraft, right? So I just press 2 buttons, this little overlay pops up, ask it any question you want, and it'll give you the answer, right? Because our raid is stupid and kept dying on silly mechanics. So I was like, I'm going to build this thing so everyone can just look at it. And then I got like 90% of the way there and then actually got rate limited. I was mind blown. I've never been rate limited before.
Did you get rate limited or did you run out of 5-hour usage?
I ran out of 5-hour usage.
Yeah.
That's the worst though. It's like it just teases you like, okay, in 1 more hour, and you're like,
no, it was like my time reset at like 2 a.m. and I was like, bro, it's 11. I'm not gonna like you've killed my passion for this now.
So can we talk about something interesting though? Because I don't know about you guys. This happens to me all the time. I'm using I feel like I've got almost every coding plan at this point. And some of them, you hit your time limit, and it'll just stop like mid token output.
Yeah.
So it's like ripping, and it'll just stop. It'll be like, you're done. And I'm just like, man. But the one thing Codex does that I actually think is pretty nice is Codex does it as prompt based. And so they will finish the thread. Sometimes it doesn't quite get to where you want, but it does finish the thread. So it'll be like at 0%. Yeah. And it'll be like, still going. Sometimes I've had it where it's at like 4%. It's like, sorry, you can't do this because I think it's still like updating itself, but it's behind. But
I think Claude is the worst at that. The last time I used it, it would just like I would see it doing its thing, and then it would be like halfway through changing something, and it would just be like, meh, nope, no more.
You know what really sucks though? I've got Claude through multiple plans. I don't have a Claude. It's the one that I don't have, and I don't know. It's like I'll struggle with something for a while, and I'm like not really thinking about it because I'm like, right, just like sending it in the background. And all of a sudden you put Opus on that thing and it just figures it out in 30 seconds. So I don't know what those guys have done,
but I will say, I think a lot of the model providers specifically, I mean, their business model is entirely around token consumption. And like, you also see it like, like Uber or Meta, like they're coming out with like you have token usage leaderboards and things like this. So a lot of the use is tailored around how many tokens can you consume. And there's very little like, yeah, there's some caching in Claude code, but like I saw Gary Tan just like added to like Gbrain. I don't know if you ever use the skill file, but it's pretty good at like doing some sensible things when you're coding with it. But he just added like if you're using OpenClaw, it would just pull this mega prompt to do coding jobs, and which was like completely nonsensical, would burn through your like hourly plan. And so you can just do this without using a prompt, basically, without using tokens at all, and just make it deterministic. Yeah. So these little tricks, I think, will give more and more input into like our harnesses.
Oh yeah, I think it'll go the other way. I think we're actually going to wind up saying, hey, like it'll be a leaderboard, but it'll be like token efficiency leaderboard. I think it's who can get the most ROI using the least amount of tokens, or cheaper tokens. If you can get the same output as your colleague, but your colleague's using Opus 4.7 and you're using Haiku 4.6, like you're a hero. That's the reality. Like you are. Most people don't want to admit it, but like when you upgrade the model, you see the significant impact, and it really changed what you can do. Which I don't know. I mean, James, curious on what you're seeing, but I feel like there's been a little bit of a slowdown and speed up at the same time around maybe more of your agentic commerce. I feel like we've kind of taken maybe like 2 steps forward, 1 step back type of thing, where I think a lot of the experimentation feels like it's kind of died down a little bit. And we're starting to see people maybe shift more toward, hey, I want to run a real business around this. And I think that may be just how it feels a little bit. And I say that because I say that because I'm seeing less spam agents get registered and less just like, hey, let me go spin up an X402 service and then it dies next week. And it feels like we're starting to see more long haul teams come in. And I'm just curious if, any of this stuff you guys are seeing is impacted based on either, it continues to get easier to build and ship code, but it also now is harder to get distribution, and it's harder to, I guess, make things to the same point. Like, it's harder to be more efficient when the model it's easier to just go toward the more expensive thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, like, I agree with you. I think in general, like, there was this, like, obviously, like a year or two ago today, there was this massive, like, explosion of X402. There was tokens deployed with it, and there was a lot of hype around it. And then, like, I don't know, the past 3 to 4 months, there was, like, as you mentioned, in December when Claude started getting better, a lot of like renewed interest in actually building some business around this. And so there's another like little mini hype cycle. Now I think we're at the point where people have realized like, okay, the volume in aggregate is pretty low across, and not even X402 specifically, just agents transacting is fairly low compared to like virtually any other vertical. And so I think people are now like, okay, what are people really willing to pay for? By people, I mean you're giving funds to your agent to do something on your behalf. And what exactly is this? What use cases work really well today? Whether this is autonomously or not. And so a lot of my focus is kind of around that of like what use cases exist today. But I would say the secondary focus, or not the secondary focus, but parallel focus is how do we expand that total addressable market? Because like the pie is still so tiny. Um, we need to build actual useful services for people to get adoption and get volume thrown through this.
Definitely. That makes sense.
Did you guys see what Base put out like yesterday or the day before with that massive marketplace? It looked awesome.
Coinbase.
I think it was Coinbase that did it.
Yes, not Base.
Yeah.
Base.
Yeah, they are definitely completely different companies. Base and Coinbase, completely different. I broke Sawyer.
But yeah, I definitely saw that. Yeah, sorry, I think breaking up. But definitely saw that. I think this is I've been discussing this with like a lot of people is you need a discovery layer for your agents to have useful things. So I think they did a good job of consolidating a lot of the different endpoints that were probably scattered across their ecosystem, and they put them all in one place and then enabled people to basically get discovered and found in some way. I think that was like a clear kind of like thing. My personal opinion is that you need to also go one step further of focusing on what is the problem that someone is trying to solve or an agent is trying to solve, and how you consolidate multiple services to fill that problem. Because that's what I find, like the models are like good enough. They're PhD in virtually every topic, but they don't have domain specific knowledge. And so like even for DevRel and things like this, I need to instruct them or write a custom skill file with knowledge that only I have, and then the model's pretty good. And I think that applies to, and what I see even like from finance and marketing, that applies to a lot of domains. So like, how can you consolidate multiple like endpoints and flows into a single like use case and make that like valuable for users? That's kind of what I'm focused on, where my head's at.
Makes sense. I think there's a few things I want to pull out of there. The first is, I think in regards to the discovery piece, I agree. It's something you and I have talked about publicly multiple times, privately many times. And I think it's funny because I kind of pendulum swing back and forth on how it's going to take shape. And I think this actually is going back to maybe one of the first things you said. I think how people create agents and how the agents wind up being consumers is just, I think it's going to drastically change. I think the open clause and the Hermes agents of the world are great.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're almost too customizable for people. And so I know that sounds maybe really backwards, but I believe that we're going to get to a point where you'll see this concept of like the personal agent becoming like the new meta, the new trend. I think right now you've got people that are more professionals or they're like hardcore tinkers and they've got fleets of agents. But the reality is an individual person doesn't need a fleet of agents. A single person normally just needs, a personal agent would be nice, right? It's like a PA, but it's maybe a bit more proactive for you than a human who is waiting on you to tell you things. They can't see inside everything you do the same way software that is ingrained into your life does. But I think the problem with the open clause and the Hermes agents and all these is, and obviously there are hosted services for these now. I've used many of them. I personally don't like most of them. I think most of them are overcomplicated or break, or they're very expensive. But it's just like this. How do you even explain it? It's like it makes sense that an agent will pay for things for you on your behalf. I think the part that I continue to come back to is it actually makes more sense for an agent to pay for things that the human is already paying for, just with this more efficient rail. And I feel like we kind of took a step really far away from that. And everyone kind of said, well, it makes the most sense to make the agents buy inference and compute and all these things. Like, yes, it does, if these agents need to be fully self-autonomous. But we forgot to actually make an agent work for a human before we made them attempt to be functionally like self-sentient, run infinite loop, supporting themselves. I know some people that have done really cool experiments there, and they've gotten some great results. But the reality is, it's like 1 in a million. You've got like all these people trying it. It's like one person gets it right. But we don't yet really have, the thing where it's like, hey, let me, like, here's an application that just kind of builds an agent slowly for you, and it just gets better and better. It's kind of interesting. I just don't really feel like we have, like, yeah, we have ChatGPT and stuff. We have automations and skills now. But we don't really have a personal agent. And I think the weird part is, and maybe this is where MPP will just have an easier time because they're already set up for it. You tell me your thoughts. Seems likely that a personal agent would pay for things like groceries and gas and Amazon and stuff like that far before they're ever going to pay for influence. But I feel like we pendulum swung very far toward the compute side.
Yeah, I think like on the compute thing, it's just what agents are paying for now. So like you see kind of every implementation of like a discovery service or like a X42 endpoint has usually like some level of like ChatGPT integrated into it, or Claude API, because that's what agents they have to pay for. Like it's like kind of the starting point. But I agree with you. Like a lot of this should just be kind of abstracted away, and even like I'm able to get it to work because I know everything that you need to install and like also the troubleshooting process. But if you just point your agent at an Amazon page and say, go buy me something, it's like, it's still not there. Yeah, if you're a tech person or if you're a tinkerer, it's completely fine. But there's still a hard barrier. So I've played around with some of the consumer agents, which are nice, but they haven't been that useful. Basically like a companion.
Yeah, it's more just like, I feel like the delegation framework is backward. That won't make sense. They make something. How do we phrase that? The delegation of operations and the order of operations of which agents are given access to do things or created feels very backwards to me right now. And what I mean by that is, your options today are essentially go to a siloed party who you then have to connect things into, right? Like plugins and integrations, or you have to run your own agent and do the same thing.
Yep.
There is no, which is kind of funny because it was one of the first things that came out, and maybe it's being used in enterprise and I'm just not in that scene as much, but I feel like A to A is almost the ideal, which is agent to agent, is almost the ideal thing here, where it would be awesome if Amazon had an agent that was hyper specific and built on Amazon, which they basically already have. It's just not public because like it works in the app, right? You search and it magically figures stuff out. Why can I not create an agent that is capable of talking to Amazon's agent? Why do I have to talk to an MCP? Why does my agent have to go through the inference loop to actually make the decision when all my agent wants is the decision made? Because the human's the same way, right? It's not like, let's be honest, how many people scroll through like 25 pages of Amazon? I know people that will scroll hours and hours and hours on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, but I don't know many people that will go to page 25 of Amazon. Most people,
Amazon Reels, like that's my favorite pastime.
we need to have a talk about that. Okay, maybe 25 Reels deep, but I'm saying like when you search for a product, right? Like Valcor's got a giant sword behind him. He says, I need a new sword. Dude, there's literally a sword in the corner. He says, I need a new sword because, I don't know, he wants to go to the Renaissance Fairs.
Mhm.
You seem like the kind of guy that go to a Renaissance Fair. I mean, it's not judgment. It's cool. Anyways, he wants a new sword. He goes on Amazon and he says, I need a new sword with a brown hilt. And it pulls up a sword. And he's like, scrolls a couple things and then he's like, all right, I want that. That's like the 99% of people. You like already know mostly what you want because you have that preference data built into your memory. But agent memory is severely limited by, well, memory.md files and rag files and so files, agent.md files and system files. And so it's like, it can only know so much. And then by the time you actually get there, it's now asking you to like buy the wrong product, or maybe it just fails and burns a bunch of tokens. So I'm just saying, in a hypothetical world, doesn't it make more sense if companies built their own domain-specific agents, and then agents could just talk to each other instead of everyone having to consume 10,000 MCPs and RAG services and APIs?
I mean, I don't even disagree, because I feel like it's the obvious implementation where right now the burden is on the user to have an agent on their behalf, and then they operate on something. While I think the logical thing is, you say you want to purchase something, it directs to Amazon. Amazon has an agent. It has all your like purchase history. It has your preferences. They have their own data, and then it finds the products that are aligned with like kind of your intent, and that also fit, your general like buying history. Because that's like how I operate. Like, yeah, I could direct my agent, say, buy me a white T-shirt, but I don't want a white T-shirt from, I don't know, the Gap or something. I want it from XYZ brand, or this one is like very special. It uses Supima cotton, and so my expectation is that like the agent should know that history. But in what you're talking about is like, yeah, just in markdown files, it's not going to have that. It's going to have only what I've told it.
Yeah, it's kind of a can't even hate on it, because like, let's be honest, it's so cool still, but it's just like, I don't know. It's weird, because I think if this were 6 months ago, we'd be sitting here and be like, oh yeah, that's something that could happen in like 5 or 10 years. It's like, again, it's been 5 months, it's been 4 months since the world changed.
Have you real quick?
Do you think we'll get a? Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, have you seen Clicky? It was like a big GitHub release, but
yeah,
I really like that. And I immediately thought, I'm like, this is like it's so popular, but it's such the wrong implementation. It's like, if you install that on your website and then you just ask, like, almost like an old school paperclip from like Microsoft Word era, and then it just directs you exactly where you need to click to do everything on like UI UX. Because I was thinking, I'm like, this is like the perfect use case for an agent where you have potentially old school people who are using like a UI UX directly, but AI enhances kind of that tutorial experience or like training experience.
Yes,
which I thought was really interesting.
No, I agree. I mean, if anyone listening, if you have ever built a tutorial experience in UI, it's kind of like really weirdly painful. Buttons don't pop up in the right place, making them WCAG accessible can be a bit frustrating. A lot of little nitty-gritty details, but I agree. I think it's a good, I think that's kind of the, as the state-of-the-art models keep getting bigger and better, I think in parallel, we're also seeing some, very few. Right? It's really Google and Quen are really the only two releasing small models that are capable of running on device that work. I don't know if you've played around at all with either Gemma 4. Some of the mixture of experts are pretty damn good. They can run fully like on device. Same thing with Quen 3. They launched a couple models under 2 billion parameters. Pretty good actually. The 0.6 one's terrible unless you like tune the heck out of it. But then another company, Prism, they distilled those things down to like 1 and 2 bit with this like crazy, it's called ternary something. It's wild. Basically, they made it tiny, runs on like 300 megabytes, but it's like an 8 bill parameter model. It's like actually pretty decent at basic chat.
I think that's the one I'm using. Did it come out recently?
You don't have a Mac.
Actually,
I guess you don't need a Mac, but the Mac ones are smaller. The MLX ones are smaller. The ternary bonsai.
Oh, bro, I don't know what the name of these things are. I
Ternary bonsai.
I know
You don't know ternary bonsai?
I know it's Quen, and I know it's tiny.
Quen 3 0.6b.
Yeah, I think that
that's my experimental model.
Oh, this just released like today, 15 hours ago.
Which one?
Is that true? Ternary bonsai?
Ternary bonsai was released on Thursday last week.
Oh, okay.
Tuesday last
I
week.
see people talking about it, like there was a post about it very recently.
I mean, it's been pretty big because what they it's a really interesting research paper that came out from, I think it was Microsoft, maybe in 2024, maybe, about something called B1.58, which is essentially you can represent weights just by like -1, 0, and 1. Maybe it's like -1 and 1 or 1 and 0 or something. I think it's 0 and 1. And then basically they were able to do like a 1-bit quantized model that could run, locally on CPU, be super cheap. And as you know, James, for those that don't know, when you quantize a model down, it tends to get really dumb really fast. Or at least like if it was a good model before, it gets dumb. Doesn't mean it's like totally bad. But basically, these guys took Quen 3 and they distilled Quen 3 with what they call ternary B158, which is where every weight gets represented as a 0, a 1, or a -1. And so they compressed an 8 billion parameter model down to like 300 megabytes, which is pretty wild.
How does it have the like logical understanding?
Oh, this is a fun topic, and I'll butcher this a lot. So feel free to call me out if I'm wrong. But I've been spending a lot of time researching this on the weekends because I think it's so cool. Basically, models inherently know nothing. They just have weights that somehow, when you put information through, generate other information that looks right. That's part of why this thing kind of operates like a brain. And so when you pump data through a model during training, all you're essentially doing is bumping the weights into the ideal position.
Yeah.
And so when you distill these models down, all you're doing is changing the weights. You're trying to make the weights smaller. There's something you can do with what they call the dimensions of the model. So basically how much metadata per weight there is, you can shrink that, which again makes the model dumber. There's all these things you can manipulate at the weights, the individual layers that it goes through. You can manipulate even like, they call it the summary vector, which is where when you pass info through, generates a summary vector, which then impacts which weights are selected. So you can basically manipulate all this stuff. And what's interesting is that whether your model is 1 trillion parameters or your model is 600 million parameters, which is significantly different. One is like a few gigabytes and the other is like petabytes, hundreds of gigabytes. They theoretically know, one knows more than the other, but it only knows more because it has more dimensions of weights. It doesn't actually have like raw information like you think of it in the model. The model literally has like 2 weights that when you put a string in and get a string out, it somehow represents text, right? Or multimodal like images and stuff. So the unique part is the Quen one, Quen 3 0.6b, which is a tiny little model, was pre-trained on 18 trillion tokens, which is a significant amount for a tiny model. But it's still kind of, I won't say dumb, but like it's kind of dumb comparatively because it's so small. The weights don't have the ability to reason well enough to give you an output like a model that is 2, 3, 4, 5 times its size. There are things you can do to manipulate that and improve it. There's ways to strengthen them and distill them and blah, blah, blah. But basically that's why. So the reason I kind of like going into this kind of stuff is because I actually think this is very relevant toward the agentic commerce world and all these agents, which is, I don't see a world where every single agent runs on cloud inference. I just don't think it's feasible. For our discussion at the start, I feel like we're already kind of in this like GPU energy crisis mode right now, and it just hasn't really truly hit yet. I feel like we're kind of in the, if you're paying attention, you make your assumption on whether you agree or disagree it's happening. One day we'll wake up and it'll just be like, hey, guess what? The world's out of GPUs. Sorry. Go remember how to code again. Or pay 10 times the amount per model. Who knows? But the reality is not every task needs a state-of-the-art model. It's actually proven that domain expertise often can give you a better result on a worse model than a better model with just generic inputs. If you've been paying attention at all to the Twitter sphere of really nerdy AI people, the new kid on the block that's really exciting is called a recursive language model, which is where they somehow use, they basically let the model run in like an internal loop, and it accesses like significantly higher amounts of distilled information on itself. I won't even try to explain it better than that because I would be so wrong. But basically, they've been able to get like pretty good models to be state of the art on really long running tasks because they don't run out of context, because they essentially just keep recycling it on themselves. Bad analogy. But the cool part is one of the guys that was doing this, he's one of the creators or like open source contributors to the DSpy stuff, which is, if you're not familiar with DSpy, another butchered description would be, imagine if every time your LLM ran, it generated a better prompt for itself before it actually ran. That's kind of what DSpy does. So it gets you better outputs and it keeps things kind of within rails. They have something called GEPA, G-E-P-A, which they somehow use to improve the system prompt going into Claude's Haiku model. And the Go resources, the numbers are like astronomical. They were able to get it to hit like 80% plus on various benchmarks.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, like pretty significant increase. And so I say all that because I do believe that that's a pretty large blocker for a lot of people. It's really not fun to build an agent if your agent sucks. It's kind of like building software, building anything. It's really not fun if it's bad. And so I feel like there's this stigma around using worse models. Everyone just always wants the best now, but the reality is you don't always need the best. And I feel like that is holding back potentially some of this agentic growth.
It's kind of funny because I'm definitely like in that spoiled category. I like using the best model, so like whatever has the output. But I like not because I would say most of the tasks, like especially the long running tasks that are complex, like if you say build a whole application, generally I find like the top of the line model generally does have the best output. But if I'm doing like, I don't know, troubleshooting, or once I have like this one shot prompt and then I'm doing refinements, I find a lot of the times like a lesser model would be perfectly serviceable. And then also there's a lot of I know there's a lot of logic within some of these harnesses where they will direct, like depending on the difficulty of your prompt, they'll actually offload it to a lower model. And so this is like quite different than like the thinking, which like has like a scale between 0 to 100 of how much the model actually thinks, but also like a whole different model altogether. So I see probably we'll get to a point where very few tasks actually will need, PhD level intelligence or super intelligence. And then a lot of the day-to-day stuff will just be kind of offloaded to us.
Do you think like right now, kind of the reason why we're using these large models is the fact that we are still kind of teaching them, right? Like there is no reason for example, my mother uses my ChatGPT account, right? And it's always the same things, which is like, how can I make a gluten-free this? How can I do this? You don't need the, GPT 5.4 to do this. We could be, those answers could be done off of, the first ever bloody model. So do you think that one of the reasons why we're still being pushed towards this kind of like, you use the biggest model there is because we're still doing fine tuning and learning and things like that?
I mean, well, I think the obvious one is more revenue for the companies that are creating these providers. I think they also get the best. The more that people use the best models, the more they know of what the model is good at and what it's actually bad at, and also just what people are using it for generally, which is mainly coding tasks nowadays. And but I would say at some point, probably like I think everyone in this call is like well aware a lot of the models are being subsidized, and then therefore some point this switch will flip and will be like bearing the cost once you're kind of locked into, choose your ecosystem. And I think whenever that happens, then it will be, like people will think much more about this if the cost 10x.
I also think it's actually quite limited costing for them. I don't know enough about this. It's something if someone's listening that knows more about this, please reach out because I'd love to learn. My understanding is that most of these large language models from the state-of-the-art providers are so big, they oftentimes take up a whole like 8 rack of GPUs because they're literally so big. Like I think there was rumors that the Opus models are like 3 to 5 trillion parameters or something, which is like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like I can't do that math off the head. It's just, let's just say that it takes so much compute to run these things that it is probably more efficient for these companies, from my understanding of the basics of computing, to literally just have the fewest amount of models running. So it's actually not in their best interest either to have older models, because then they'd have to load them in and out of memory, which would be very slow and cost and inefficient. And so it's actually, I think, basically run the smallest amount of stuff possible at all times, I think. Which is why I think in like the ChatGPTs and the Claudes, you get 1, 2, 3 model options, whereas via the API, it's more expensive, but they give you more options. So just my 2 cents. If someone knows, please do reach out. Separately though, this is maybe a really great time to bring up this thing that I know Falco and I have both wanted to ask for exactly 42 minutes and 27 seconds, which is, James, we heard a rumor that you did something at home with AI. Man, I've only had 1 cup of coffee today. I'm sorry. Anyways, there's a rumor that's going around. And when I say a rumor going around, I mean literally the rumor was told to me, so it's really not a rumor. Information shared that you, James, decided to do the genome experimentation at home. And I'd just be very curious to hear anything you're willing to share. Obviously, that information is very personal, and so only share what you're comfortable with. But if there is anything there you can share about how you did it, what you did, and kind of how it makes you feel about maybe using AI for things that historically have been just not feasible, I'd be very curious.
Yeah, so probably, I don't even think you know this, but so before crypto, now 8 years ago, I was in neuroscience, neuroengineering. And so I did a lot of work on the brain and stuff. And so I was always interested in biology. And I thought about this back then, but basically sequencing your whole genome. And I don't mean the 23andMe and the ancestry stuff, which is quite different. You basically do 30x resolution. So what that means is basically you're scanning a sequence of your genome 30x times, and that eliminates basically any errors for the most part. And that basically gives really high reliability and validity that this is in fact your genome and it's fully sequenced, which means you have the entire structure. And you can also, this is more relevant for medical stuff, for I don't know if you want to see performance related things, enhancing certain things, etc. So the 23andMe is kind of for genealogy, and then you can do this analysis of your full genome for like medical. And so previously this would cost like $1 million to do this. And so now like recently a guy was promoting there's a device called Minion, and you can basically buy it and have it at home. You can set up your own wet lab for 5 to 6K, which is pretty wild, and you can do this at home. I didn't do that, so that's if you want to be super private. You want to have everything completely local. For me, I just went to like a company that like has high security principles and privacy principles, and you can like always delete the data, and then just sequence my genome, and they just give you the raw data file. And previously, you had to go to these companies and then like throw in your whole raw file. You have to know what you're looking for, and in this case, you can just more or less throw it. I use a local model because I'm not going to pass my whole genome to Claude. But you can pass this and it gives you like a full output. And I built a skill around it. So like it looks for, I don't know, sports related things, for like cognitive abilities, for medical things that you should look for. And I think the cool thing is this individualized like health treatment that you can do, if you want to call it health. But it's really interesting that like AI then empowers you to do this kind of like something that was previously untenable, or you had to have a PhD in biology in order to even figure out what's happening, or work directly with a lab. Now you can more or less plug this into a model of your choice, and you get like personalized health assessments. So like as an example, it will tell me, oh, I have a deficiency in iron, for instance. And so I should take more supplements in order to like accommodate that, which doesn't apply to the whole population. It's specifically tailored to you. So like a lot of like the health advice is generalized to fit, the vast majority of people. And so I really like this. I think it goes back into this like crypto ethos of, self-empowerment, which is really interesting. So that's basically what I did last week or so. Yeah, went through the whole genome thing, but it was really insightful. And if you haven't done it, highly recommend checking it out. And it's just like, it's really valuable because then you see, yeah, really the impact of everyone, as you were talking about, like having their own local model and having something private. And you're able to do this with your data like at scale. Even as a fairly non-technical person, it's pretty simple to get this set up.
What model do you use?
So what did I use? I would have to check. Yeah, it was about a week and a half ago. So whatever's on my local Mac, but it was fairly robust. And that's in general what I'd recommend. I built I knew what kind of markers to look for. So I built like a whole analysis pipeline to do this and make it a scale file. But it's really interesting. And like, I kind of got the idea from this guy. He posted on Twitter about like having a local, as well as someone's dog had cancer, and they did this whole,
the Australian guy.
It went viral, so it was very big. But he did this whole like analysis on the dog, developed a specific like targeted treatment for the dog, and it's like, this is just wild. You can do this at scale now.
Yeah, I think I saw that one. I think that guy was Australian. I think I saw that he spent like $3,000 in like Claude credits and created like a specific, to your point, like a specific cure that stopped basically like what the cancer remission was on. So I feel like that is, to me, where that's kind of my proof point right around, like, I think the agentic economy is interesting, but it seems more likely that we get to this point where agents are just spending in the same way that humans are. It just becomes, as intelligence gets unlocked for humanity, there's less of a need to do things that take significant amount of time. And there's more opportunities, I think, to get creative. which is maybe one of those. It's maybe one of those more like Cinderella story ideologies, right? Like, if you haven't seen, there's a lot of people talk about this now, where it's like, well, if this stuff just does everything for us, what do we actually do? I think the answer is, well, we probably get miserable for a bit, and then we probably start getting creative, because now we can do things that it basically opens up a whole new world, right?
I'm such an optimist around AI. Like I don't know if it's even like being naive, but people like are a lot of doomers. Like, okay, well, AI is going to take all the coding jobs, and they're going to take all the white collar jobs. Robots are going to take the blue collar jobs, and then what do humans do? We just sit there and watch content all day. I don't think so. I think people are more creative. People will find ways to create fulfilling lives for them. So I just think AI is an important tool.
I agree, and I think that's what's, like I said, I think to me that's what's exciting, right? Is I mean, the crazy part is how early we are. We're going to look back on this like a year, and the world could look totally different. Probably will. Looks different every 2 days now. But I think what's what's so exciting is we've got all this new stuff, and it's now feasible to give an agent money and let them go pay. It's feasible to, in theory, give a robot money and let them go pay. Like, I don't know if you haven't seen the robots walking down the street of San Francisco. Sometimes they just let them go. It's kind of crazy. Your car can technically pay for you, right? I mean, these cars drive themselves around town, right? They can pay their own tolls and do all that stuff. It's normal. So I feel like the really exciting part, I think, is going to be when the commerce side starts to get adoption from more traditional merchants, and we figure out this way to make it more accessible to non-tech people. It always happens this way. I mean, it always starts with the technical people, but I do think that's kind of, to me, I'd say like the roadblock in front of agentic commerce right now is we've now got state-of-the-art model providers and agentic search for like all these big companies on board. So it kind of feels like, okay, we beat this level. To me, it feels like the next level is how does everyone have an agent that is actually buying things so we can then spend time on more exciting things? That just to me maybe is the next.
It reminds me of like the, I don't know, 2023, 2022, when a lot of enterprises were like dabbling in stable coins, or they were launching some kind of crypto use case, and it was more or less to show that they were on the cutting edge, and that they were doing like the bleeding edge thing. And then it took a year or so, a reset, and then all of a sudden you actually saw mass amounts of adoption, and then like stable coins are the flagship use case of crypto now. And so everyone's like hyped about it, and transferring a lot of volume, and has a lot of positive impact. So I do think agentic payments and commerce will take a similar fashion, where there's a lot of hype around it. Use cases haven't been fully fleshed out yet, but we'll get there. And it's like, it's clear to anyone looking at the space, like it's such an obvious way that like technology will move, is you have these things transacting on your behalf.
Definitely.
Do you think, because I'm going back to the genome thing, right? Like, I've done 23andMe, my wife's done Ancestry and things like that, right? And there are like personality indicators. Now, whether or not those are BS or accurate is another question. But do you think we could get to a point where we almost can, because we like the perfect world is, and me and Sawyer have spoken about this for like a year now, of you want your AI to be able to act on its own in interest of you as the consumer. Do you think like genome reports, social reports, everything, just feed the bastard? You'll get to a point where you've almost got like a carbon copy of yourself.
I mean, I don't think we are so far from something like, I mean, what that's getting into like more philosophical, like philosophy, but like, what are you? And if it's like an amalgamation of your genetics, your social preferences, your behaviors, then I mean, you have the data, you have all your emails you've written, chat messages, Slack messages, you could feed that into a model, your genome, you could feed in what you watch on YouTube and so on, how you talk and your cadence. I think we're not that distant from something like this.
I actually think one of the biggest limitations right now is the level of effort it takes to train a model, and post-train. Like you can, for like broad logic, it's not that hard to post-train and fine-tune a model. There's actually some really cool companies that make it fairly easy. But I think to maybe what we talked about earlier, there's so much information that actually surrounds like an identity that I feel like the best way to probably represent that would be through significant training of a personalized model. And I do think we'll get there. I just think right now, there's really, from my knowledge, only one way to truly train an LLM efficiently, and it's just not that efficient. It requires so much compute and GPUs, but there's really no other way to do it. We haven't, no one's figured it out. So until we get to that point, I don't really see that being an easy thing to do. But I do think once it's figured out, I don't think it'll be unrealistic to see the state of the art companies potentially let people do like self-fine-tuning.
So we can just create a stream and we just put all our agents and let them have a conversation.
and then it goes back to, what are we doing? Like what do we do? The agent shows up for work. The agent buys the groceries. The agent cooks for you. It's a robot now. It's got hands and feet. Who knows? It's gonna be crazy cool.
Exactly.
That's I guess, James, one last question for you before we kind of wrap up here. I'm curious, obviously you're experimenting a lot with the things that are gonna help and maybe make sense for agents to do in this open economy. And so I'm curious, what's maybe the number one thing you're seeing right now where you say, everyone's kind of focused here, but I think there's maybe an opportunity over here instead. Seems like we're maybe missing something obvious. Curious if there's anything there where, just based on where you're spending your day to day, you say, I think we could do this maybe a little better.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned at the top of the call is like, I think people are thinking, okay, we need more services that are enabled by agentic payments. I think that's kind of like par for the course. But really, for me, the most valuable thing is, and what I see day in and day out, like using agents, not even for agentic payments, just like for workflows, is like, for instance, if I want to create a new app, I can obviously go to Claude and just say, build me a new app. But I don't want only that. I want a new app that uses Trails, that uses Polygon, for example, that does something in like this specific token, and it does this particular workflow, and it uses these APIs, and it's very scoped. And I think that's basically what we're fundamentally missing a lot of times, is like, we have all these services, but how do you condense them into use cases that actually add value to people and are easily distributable? So that's something that, to me, is a core thing that I have seen very little work on, is like, whether you classify this as like a skill file that someone develops and it attaches to a bunch of services, or whether there's a whole protocol around this. But that's what I see today, is like a gap that we're missing, where I just want my agent to be more useful to me and be able to do more useful things in a deterministic way.
Makes a lot of sense. I feel like that actually, it's a different way to say it, but it almost feels like that's the kind of what I was saying before around like the open clause and the Hermes agents being, it's so cool. It's so innovative. Like, props to the creators and the teams running these. Not saying they're bad, but it's just like, they don't quite get to where I actually want them to be. They're just they're too experimental. And every time you change one thing, it impacts everything else in a negative way. At least that's how it feels for I make one thing way better, but then everything else seems to digress even worse. And so it's a really interesting, maybe just deeper thought process we can dive into later. But I definitely agree with you that I want my agents to be more effective, but I also, in an ideal world, I want them to have enough capability to not have me force feed them the little details. It's getting tedious.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like I go through this pain all the time. It's like if I want to even do something that I've told them 1,000 times, and I like, you know, I'm pretty like I save things to memory. I try to instruct it. I have like specific, you know, pre-flows that it checks and files that it checks. But there's definitely some nuances there, and I think these use cases need to get better. And yeah, hopefully we'll get there soon.
Fair enough. Fair enough. No, I agree. My last closing words, since I know Falco was going to ask me for them anyways, is you know, I think one of the last things that I need more coffee. I'm sorry. I believe that there's a significant opportunity for agents to bring capabilities to humans that humans have not been capable of yet. Right? We've already kind of aligned it. And so we're seeing a lot of this in healthcare, personal health. We're seeing a lot of this in raw intelligence, coding, research, et cetera. These things are, to your point, PhD plus level candidates in dang near everything at this point. Interestingly enough, though, they kind of suck at finance. They're not great. I think there's too much data, too much context. They're not necessarily trained on it. Use like time series prediction models and get some interesting results. But the reason I say that is not because I think there's not because they can't do it, and not because all of them are bad. Some of the models are pretty good at making decisions, but because trading is not just about how fast you can trade, right? It's not just about like how good is this individual trade. It's this like long running logic. And so we had Justin from UV on a few weeks ago, and he brought up the fact that the execution engines for finance are really never going to change, right? You've got your NASDAQs, you've got Jane Street, Citadel, right? The people that are actually settling the trades. And then you've got the actual strategy, like how you're doing it. And so one of the things that I think will become really prominent for agents is I think the obsession over agentic finance is actually going to grow, despite all the DeFi hacks going on. I think there's been too much complexity in DeFi because everyone's been chasing yield for so long. And I don't think agents care about that because agents can optimize for positions in a way that is better than getting an extra 3% token yield. I think the things that agents need are the right protocols on chain. And then they can do some incredible things if they can actually live trade. The reason I say that is because if you try to get like an API key for a brokerage firm, it's actually very hard if you're like a personal trader. Try. They don't want to let me in. It's very sad.
Really?
Probably for good reason. But yeah, I tried. They never got back to me. Reached out multiple times. They're just like, yeah, don't want to. So I think that's where, you know, on-chain blockchain is really cool. And I do think we're going to see a bigger obsession here, but I think we also need to see better protocols. We haven't really seen a lot of innovation in DeFi in a long time. I think it's time to change. And with that, I leave you with my 2 words, which is tune in next Tuesday for more information on what that's going to be, which is programmable privacy.
No leaking.
I've been tweeting about it.
Yeah, no, it's not really. Yeah. Well, James, thanks so much, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been fun. Just having a little ramble, have a little fun one. But yes, make sure you guys join us all again next week as we do break down what the hell is programmable privacy. All right, guys. Thank you. Anything further from you, James?
No, I think all good on my side. I think we wrapped up me sequencing my genome. I exposed everything. So I think we're
100%, man. Awesome. All right, guys. Awesome. We will catch you all next week. Goodbye.
Hey, cheers.
Take care. Have a good one, guys.
All right, class. Time to say goodbye. Let's erase the board.